a freezing night in December 1916, a group of Russian noblemen set out to murder a single peasant. They fed him cakes and wine laced with enough cyanide to kill several men. He ate them and drank and went on talking. Unsettled, they shot him. He fell, and then, by their own account, he rose again and lunged at them. They shot him more. They beat him. They bound him, and they pushed his body through a hole in the frozen river. And from that night came a legend that has never died, that Grigori Rasputin was a man who simply could not be killed. This is the true story of Rasputin, and the truth is stranger than the legend, because the most monstrous thing about it is not what he was. It is why so many people needed him to be a monster. Rasputin was born around 1869, a peasant in a remote Siberian village. As a young man, he was wild, hard drinking, and restless, until something turned him toward religion. He became a Stranic, a wandering holy man walking thousands of miles between monasteries, and somewhere on those roads he acquired a reputation. People said he had powers, that he could heal, that his eyes could see into your soul, and that when he fixed them on you, you felt it. Whatever the truth of it, he had a magnetism that people found almost impossible to resist. That gift carried him, an illiterate peasant, all the way to the imperial capital of St. Petersburg, and eventually into the most exclusive household in the empire, because the rulers of Russia had a desperate, secret problem, and no one else could solve it. Tsar Nicholas II and his wife, the Empress Alexandra, had 4 daughters and 1 precious son, Alexei, the heir to the throne. And Alexei was dying by inches. He had hemophilia, a disease that stops the blood from clotting, so that the smallest injury could become an agony of internal bleeding that lasted for days, and any one of them could kill him. The court doctors were helpless. It was the most closely guarded secret in Russia, and Rasputin somehow could help. Again and again, when the boy was in crisis, when the doctors had given up, Rasputin would be summoned. He would sit with the child, speak softly, calm the room, tell the frantic parents to send the doctors away, and the bleeding would ease. The boy would recover. Whether it was hypnosis or simply removing the panic and the aspirin the doctors were wrongly giving him, no one fully understands to this day. But to the Empress, it was a miracle from God. Rasputin was the one man on earth keeping her son alive, and from that moment, her devotion to him was total and unbreakable. To Alexandra, he was a saint. To almost everyone else, he was a catastrophe. Here was a filthy, drunken peasant mystic with whispered influence over the Empress of Russia. Rumors swirled around him of debauchery, of drunkenness, of women. The very name Rasputin sounded to Russian ears like the word for a dissolute man. And as the First World War began to grind the country into the dirt, the scandal curdled into something far more dangerous. In 1915, with the war going disastrously, Tsar Nicholas made a fateful decision. He left the capital to take personal command of the army at the front, and that left the Empress Alexandra in charge of the government at home. Alexandra, who was German by birth in a country at war with Germany and who trusted almost no one except Rasputin. Ministers were appointed and dismissed, it was said, on his advice. To a starving, bleeding nation, it looked as though Russia was being run by a hated German empress and her sinister peasant mystic. Whether Rasputin's actual power was as great as people believed almost did not matter. He had become the face of everything that was rotten at the top. And so a group of aristocrats, led by Prince Felix Yusupov, one of the richest men in Russia, decided that the way to save the monarchy was to kill him. They believed that if they cut out this single dark influence, the spell would break and the throne would be rescued. On that December night, they lured him to the Yusupov palace, down into the cellar with its poisoned wine and cakes. And when the poison seemed to fail, they fell back on bullets and brutality and the frozen river. But here is the truth underneath the legend. Much of the story of the unkillable monster, the poison that did nothing, the rising from the dead, comes from the killers themselves, above all from Yusupov, who told and retold the tale, each time more dramatic than the last. The autopsy suggested Rasputin died, quite simply, of a gunshot. The supernatural detail that he was still alive under the ice is almost certainly a myth. The indestructible mad monk was, to a large degree, invented by the men who needed their victim to be a devil in order to feel like heroes, and by a society that needed one strange peasant to blame for a catastrophe that was entirely its own. Because here is what the murder actually achieved: nothing. They killed Rasputin in December 1916. Within 10 weeks, the February Revolution swept the Tsar from his throne anyway. The monarchy they had murdered to save was gone in a matter of months, and little more than a year after that, the entire imperial family, Nicholas, Alexandra, the 4 daughters, and the boy Alexei, the hemophiliac child Rasputin had once kept alive, were taken down into another cellar and shot. The empire did not fall because of Rasputin. It was already falling. He was simply the story people told themselves so they would not have to look at the real rot, which was everywhere and which was theirs, and that is the part that should stay with you. When a whole system is failing, people do not want to believe that the system is failing. It is unbearable. So they look for a single face to blame, one monster, one dark influence, and they tell themselves that if they can just destroy that one person, everything will be saved. It is so much easier than admitting that the rot is in the foundations and in themselves. The Russian nobles killed their monster and felt for a moment like they had done something. And then they watched their entire world burn down anyway. We still do this. We still go looking for the one person to blame, the symptom we can kill so that we never have to face the disease. They were us, and the cellar was already waiting for them all.